What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic Saturday. And if you're watching this, chances are your Saturday didn't go quite the way that you planned for it to go. So, yes, we are still in tire limbo. Hey, Modern Red Hemi's checking in. Got the arm flex. Topic of the night. Well, there's going to be a few topics because you know how this stuff goes. But part of it's going to be a intake manifold porting hangover that I have. Dr. Diff had sent over a couple of manifolds for me to port, so I just got through knocking out 2 of those. And so I'll be talking a little bit about that. If you guys had seen my Instagram page, y'all have seen the 5.7 truck intake that I was porting last night. And I did a 5.7 LX platform or car intake today. So fun stuff to talk about. I get a lot of, I say a lot, I get some questions about intake manifold porting and what to do, what not to do, things like that, tips, tricks, all of that good stuff. It's kind of hard to take you guys on the journey with me when I'm porting a manifold because there's no way for me to actually get footage of this stuff. Plus, I can't really translate feel and everything else. But what I can do at least is give you guys an idea as far as, you know, what cartridges that I like to use and basically the reasons for that. Stuff that I've tried in the past and stuff that just flat out doesn't work. You'll end up wanting to set the thing on fire and watch it burn. So anyway, we'll be talking about that. Yes, still in tire limbo, and I've ordered another set of tires. So here's the thing. The Mickey Thompson ET Street R's are on a rolling production date. And what that means is, let's say you're given a production date of October the 10th. And then a few days or a few weeks before October the 10th, you get a update and says, it doesn't look like it's going to be October 10th. Looks like it's going to be September 10th. And you can kind of see where this is going. Well, November 10th, sorry. when you ordered it in September, I should say. So anyway, that's kind of what's happening. I was told that the ET Street R's were going to be in, basically they're going to be shipping tail end of next week. Now it looks like it's going to be middle of November-ish before I get them. And that's only if things go really, really well. There's a chance that I might not even get them until December. In fact, the latest production date put me at December 5th or 10th. I can't remember what the guy said. All I know is that I went ahead and just jumped on another set of tires. Now, what did I get? Well, changing pace a little bit. Going to go with a set of Hoosier 28 1050 17s radials. I've heard some good things about this tire. I don't know of a lot of people driving around or at least taking their car to the drag strip on these tires because it's a true slick. So what I'm going to do is, well, we're going to do a little bit of a product review, kind of an impromptu product review. And we're going to chat a little bit about what I think is going to be the difference in some anecdotal stuff that I've been hearing about. So let me check in with you guys real quick and then we'll dive right into it. Let's see. Michael Smith saying, hey, what's up? What's up, man? Nick's checking in. What up, man? Oh, man, he's got to sell a 6.1. That sucks, man. Mark Collier in the house. The arm flex. I like it. CJ Coleman saying, hey, B, what's up, brother? How's it going? It's going good. Sister Red Eye checking in with the arm flex. I like it. Sam Greble saying, I like mods, but also like money. It's hard to have both. It's extremely hard to have both. Practically impossible, you know. They say, you know, if you want to, you know, turn a lot of money into a little money, it's the best thing to do is to grab one of these things. Yagas checking in and saying, what up, B? What's up, man? Jean Paul's checking in and saying, hey, hello, Ryan. Great cold air in Canada. Ran my best time. Oh, nice. At the track, 1168, 121, 570 with a Maggie, 6-speed manual with a drag pack. I like it. That's a fun car, too, man. Kind of jealous of you. That's a sweet little car, man. Congratulations. That's excellent. Dr. Div saying, B Mason, my man, been busy today, huh? Yeah, it's a little bit busy, bruh. For sure. Yeah, we'll be talking a little bit about porting and things like that too. There's some things that are kind of counterintuitive about porting, especially when you're porting with a polymer anytime you're porting anything polymer, you've got to be careful. And there's especially some things that'll actually kind of be a little bit counterintuitive. First thing, so let's jump into that a little bit. So just in talking about the porting stuff, a lot of folks have asked what cartridge rolls do I use? What grit do I use? How many steps? What are the cutting techniques? Things like that. So basically, it's pretty simple. I mean, you're just kind of sculpting away and reshaping, in some cases, material. So it's not that difficult to do. But what can be difficult is choosing the right cartridge grit. I like to go aggressive with my grit, mainly because it keeps me from overheating the polymer. What happens is guys will go, oh, well, I'll get 120 or even 240 grit, and it doesn't remove any material. Basically, it just kind of moves it around. Think of it kind of like Play-Doh at that point. And it basically gets hot, it'll gum up the cartridge roll, and you're really not removing any real amount of material. I like a minimum of 80 when I'm cutting, and the preliminary cuts are going to be pretty aggressive. You start in the corners and then move to the flat parts. The larger the roll use a larger roll for the bigger areas. As far as corners and things like that, it depends on the intake manifold. 5.7 car manifolds. I hate those. Anyway, 5.7 car. Well, I lost my train of thought. 5.7 car manifolds. You're going to get real friendly with a 1/4 inch cartridge roll. The 1/2 inch will come in play for the sides, but you've got to do all your corners are going to be quarters. Truck manifolds, you have a combination of the two, and 6/4s you just use a 1/2 inch. But the main thing is everything's going off of feel, but you want to make sure you've got proper ventilation. You want to make sure you've got breathers, breathing apparatus. You want to make sure that you're as safe as you possibly can be. First and foremost, though, you got to clean up the unit, and that's the biggest thing. You don't want to go into that the process with a dirty manifold. So I guess if there's any advice I can give is go fairly aggressive on the cartridge roll and use a light touch, and make sure that what you're working on is extremely clean. But I mean, the thing is, guys, is I've got an air compressor, I've got a vacuum that I'm using, I'm constantly vacuuming stuff, air compressor, blowing stuff out. I'm constantly trying to keep basically up with the housekeeping of the actual job itself, because it is messy as hell. So anyway, those are some of the tips. There's really no secrets to it. Patience is a big deal. But here's some other advice, and this is kind of like learn from my mistakes type of a deal. I had at one point when I was just getting started with doing the porting stuff, I would do a rough cut and then I would go back with a finer cartridge roll, like a 120 or 180, something like that. And what I found is that the results in terms of performance were no different than if I'd have just left it rough. In fact, in some cases, the rough cuts were better. But the big issue that I had is that I would start to make a mess of everything, because to get in there and smooth things out, what was happening is I would overheat the area that I was working in, and that's easy to do. That's why, like I was saying, it's counterintuitive, but you go in and you actually use less pressure with a more aggressive cut, and it'll end up working a lot better for you. So anyway, if y'all are thinking about doing that, go ahead. And that's kind of tying the Instagram to the show here. Let's see. Sam, I have no idea what we're talking about. CJ saying, have you heard of the Acadian Beaumont, the Canadian version of the Chevelle? Oh yeah, I'd heard of it, but had never seen one. And the Casio, like I said, I've heard of it, but just never seen it. Anthony G saying, good evening, Mr. Mason. What up, man? Dr. Div saying, the slicks like the wheel speed, hit them hard and keep some pressure in them. Oh yeah, so getting back to that. So yeah, we've got a little bit of an impromptu product evaluation coming our way. So what I did is I was able to find a set of the Hoosier. It's the equivalent of a 305 45 17. Again, I don't have any experience on those tires. In fact, the only real experience when it comes to tires that I have any regular experience with, I mean, there's one-offs here and there that I've done, but as far as any of the stuff that I normally would use have always actually been ET Streets. I mean, back in the day, that's all they had, and they were non-radial. They were bias ply. Well, now, you know, we've got the radials, and that's what I've been using the most. And so when this tire was introduced, it kind of got my attention, but you know, at that time, there wasn't any issue getting your hands on a set of ET Street Rs. Well, now that there is that problem, well, I'm kind of up against it. So, Torque, what are you doing? He just got a bath, so he's all his normal self, I should say, all laid back. Anyway, let's see. Peter McLeod's asking, hey, Mr. B, I'm thinking about putting a cam in my 19 Scat Pack. I'm thinking about that Joker cam. What do you think? I think you need to call Dr. Differential and have that put in your car, because I have a feeling you're going to very much like it a lot. CJ Colvin's hanging out with Modern Red. Let's see. Oklahoma is saying, quick question. I installed Compcan's HRT Stage 2 on my 15 Challenger. It pulses and jerks at idle in gear and braking. I was told I need a stall converter. Yeah, you shouldn't need a converter for a Stage 2 HRT. What's going on with your tune, though? Who tuned it? That's going to be where you need to start, and there's a lot of stuff going on that you're going to have to take a look at in that tune. If you're having those kind of problems straight away, sounds to me like it's somebody that hasn't messed with a 220, 230 cam in a 392 before. Let's see. CJ's saying the 6.1 can take as much, if not. He's saying that the 6.1 can take more abuse than the 6.4. I wouldn't agree with that. Not from what I've seen, and not from my experience with the 6.4. Seen those things with 150, 180,000 miles on them that are still running strong and get beaten on regularly. Joe's saying, hey, B, quick question for you. What's your experience with Jay Green versus Hemi Fever? I suggest Dr. Differential or Pike's Performance tunes. Between the two, though, Green versus Hemi Fever, man, you know, 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. My experience with Hemi Fever has not been very good. That's going back a little ways, but I will say this, it was my dissatisfaction with Hemi Fever that got me back into tuning. So, silver lining. Jay Green, I don't have any experience with Jay. I know that his race tunes work fairly well, you know, race gas tunes and things like that. And he works well for guys that do not have access to, you know, or the ability to remote tune and things like that. He's good with email tunes. So, in that respect, you know, he's got some good pubs, so I wouldn't have anything bad to say about him. I just personally never hung out with the guy, but I know some guys that have, and they've got some good results. Viaga's saying, for a 5.7, which intake manifold do you recommend, 6.1 or truck 6.4? Truck 6.4, hands down, no question about it. It will walk all over that 6.1 manifold. Vortex saying, been on that Hoosier for the last year. About making a 17-inch 28. Yeah, Dot. 17-inch 28-inch tall tire. Use them in the 15 on Mustangs, and they are the bomb. I like to hear that. So, yeah, I figured it's going to be not too much different than what I'm used to right now. I mean, you figure that you've got. Yeah, there's not going to be a lot separating the two, I don't think. I will say this, though. This is the one interesting thing that I found about the two different tires. Is that just how much lighter the Hoosier is than the Mickey Thompson. So the Mickey Thompson on the website checks in at 31 pounds. The Hoosier is checking in at, what was it, like 22 or 23 pounds? So, you know, a pretty significant difference in weight there. I'm interested to see what that translates to, if the tire is going to be less stable at the top end of the track, or if it's even noticeable. So we'll see about that. CJ's hanging out with Modern. Let's see. Dr. Div saying, that one today was a quick grab and go. Sorry, it was dirty. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, they're all kind of dirty anyway. I will say this, though. Hey, Doc, tell that guy to put a catch can on that thing. So it's going to pick up power just in the amount of crap that I took out of the runners. Not the material, just the stuff. There was a layer, hold on. There was a layer on one of the runners, I kid you not, that was almost as thick as this old Fluidine plaque. I would say it was like maybe 2/3 the thickness, and that was on several of those cylinders. So yeah, I would take a look into getting a catch can for that, or use that trick we were talking about on the PCV side. Oh, and I found, what's funny, we were talking about that the other day. I actually found my old catch can that I had on my truck. It still has that PCV in there. Vortex saying, what is your race weight in the Challenger? I'm at 46.15 with my Hellcat Charger. Still waiting on my still waiting on his lightweight battery. I am 44.30. Either 44.30 or 44.40 with me in the car. Let's see. Machine's asking, do you know of any half-mile track near Houston or in Texas? It depends on where they hold the event. They hold the event at a couple of airports. One of them was at Ellington. One of them's in Victoria. Let's see. One of them's in Dallas where they hold the event. You'll just have to look at Texas Mile, I think, also follows those half-mile events as well. So check that out. Sean, thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, saying, weather permitting, I'm heading to Iowa and Missouri in a week to search for that elusive 990. Forecast of 40s to 60s, dry Cedar Falls and Mocan Raceway. Very nice, man. You'll get it too. Thank you for the contribution, brother. But yeah, thank you very much. And you'll get that 90. That car's easily 9-second capable. Bruce is asking, hey B, what's the best street setup for 500 wheel horsepower from an 06 to 09 RT Charger? Maybe incorporate a stroker. Before you do that, first of all, it's an early RT, so you're going to have the heads worked on. The valve seats have a nasty habit of falling out. So anyway, under high temp, high load conditions, not all of them do, but if you're going to be tearing the thing apart, you might as well, go all the way, right? In my opinion, man, if you want to shoot for that kind of number, put an E4 supercharger on it and call it good. It's going to be tough to get there either in any way. I mean, even with a stroker, that setup is not going to be ideal. It's a small bore, so you're not going to be flowing as much air. You're going to have a shrouded valve, even though it does have kind of the, the shotgun style combustion chamber. You're still going to be up against it. Best bet, force feed that girl, and that's the best answer I can give you, man. I wouldn't want to see you try to chase that dragon and never get close. And to be honest with you, you might not hit 5 bills with the setup that you got, but you're going to be pulling the heads off anyway. Put a small cam in it. Nothing too major, but you put a small cam in it and go with the blower. Heads will be fixed up, long tube headers, and you're well on your way to having a good time with that car. You'll be close to that 500 horsepower number that you're looking for. Broklahoma was saying it was Hemi Fever for the first 7 tunes, and I had it dyno tuned twice. It was better, but still does it. Must have missed something. Still does what? Oh, has the buck thing going. Well, oh, hang on a second. My boy needs to go inside. Here you go. In that case, give that thing a once over and make sure that there's nothing mechanical going on in there. Typically, Jay or Chris should be able to knock that out pretty quickly if that's who you've been working with. It's a pretty common upgrade, so that's the direction I would go. If they can't get you squared away, again, could be something mechanical that's giving them a fit. Let's see. Oh, Vortex saying, there is a racer here in Michigan with an Acadian Casino, runs low 8s quarter-mile, big block Chevy and nitrous. I like it. And again, Sean, thank you for the contribution, saying Saturday in Iowa, Sunday in Missouri. I like it. Smokey say, can you tell people to stop sleeping on the RT? Hey, I'll tell you what, I got one that'll get their attention. Dr. Diff's dad, in fact, I met up with him today. He's got the Joker cam. It's pretty cool. By the way, love the mask, by the way, Justin. But anyway, yeah, don't go sleeping on that car. In fact, there was an FBO LS3 Camaro that kind of got walked on by that little 5.7. So, yeah, there's that. You know, the thing about the 5.7, here's what I like about the 5.7. You know, I complain about the intake manifold, but there's really nothing to complain about. But I bitch about the intake manifold. There's so much, though, that you can do to that car that is more traditional in its outcome, at least, in the results of playing around with them. So, yeah, it's still a pain in the ass to put a cam in it, but you can put the cam in the car. You can put the exhaust on the car. It's going to act more like a traditional hot rod. And it's going to run really good. I mean, when's the last time, you know, 430, 440 horsepower at the flywheel was not a lot. You know, that's a whole lot of power. And I tell you what, Camaro found out the hard way, right, Justin? So, just saying, you can have a lot of fun with those cars. And by the way, since we're talking about the 5.7, yeah, there's a bunch of dudes with trucks that are hauling ass. So yeah, I wouldn't sleep on the 5.7. The 392 gets a lot of pub because it's a 392. And out of the box, they're really good cars. But you play your cards right with a 5.7, you'll give a 392 all the what's up it can handle, for real. So I really like 392s. Anthony's saying, hope you get it, Sean. Heck yeah. Chuck saying, hello, Brian. Could I ask about cold air intakes? Sure. Absolutely. What's the question? Which one are we talking about? And there's different styles of quote unquote, you know, so-called cold air intake. So yeah, ask whatever you want, man. You know me, shoot. Josh is asking, hey B, I have a 2012 5.7 Ram 4x4. I want to get better pulling power. What kind of mods would you recommend? I would like to do a Hellcat swap, but don't know if it would be worth it. It won't be worth it. There's easier ways to get where you are going. If you like the idea of a supercharger, you will always hear me talk about the E-Force, especially with the new Maggie compressor. That is the first and only direction I would go if you're looking to like maybe drag a boat around. You want something with a little bit more power. You need to be able to drag the thing up and down hills, stuff like that. That would be a way I would go, but just remember that the weak link that you're going to be up against with that 2012 is going to be that 545. It's going to be your transmission. So I would maybe take a look at that. You know, the only other thing I would suggest is maybe re-gearing it. You know, if you've got 355s or 323s, look at a set of 392 gears. But again, and that would make life even easier for your transmission. But again, I want to caution you, man, you're going to start finding weak links really quick with the setup that you've got. So just know that coming into it. But yeah, you can go with a tune, gears, and that'll be the kind of like the garden variety, you know, first few steps to take. But just remember, gears on that 4x4, you're going to have to buy them twice. Joshua, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Saying thank you for advice you can give, man. I appreciate that, buddy. So yeah, I mean, if you want to go forced induction, again, yeah, E-Force, cleanest kit, already made, ready to go. Comes with its own tune that's a little too soft, if I'm being honest. But you know, bang for the buck is going to be the best investment that you can make for that thing. And thank you again for the contribution. I appreciate that. Chuck is asking, is it worth changing out my stock Mopar cold air intake on my 2020 Challenger RT Plus shaker? No, man, not really. I tell you what, I mean, yeah, you can go with the K&N. That's the tried and true, you know, filter. but it's not going to offer up a whole lot of performance gains. You've already got an extremely good intake system. I'd probably just rock what you got. It's really not worth it. I mean, believe me, I've tried every cold air kit, or I have documented. When I say every, I mean like relevant, like some of the JLTs and, you know, the more basic, you know, like a pipe with a filter on the end of it, all the way through to some of the AFE momentum style and all of that. I've documented, I've dyno tested, I've track tested all of them. The shaker system is actually the best system out of all of them in terms of quarter mile performance. So take the dyno stuff completely out of the equation, because the cold air intakes perform remarkably well on the dyno. They just don't perform at all on the drag strip. So I'll give you a perfect example of this. Revlon. In roughly the same state of tune, I'm running a stock air box with the stock filter. Had a guy running a JLT cold air setup, and it didn't make any power. And you got to remember that, you know, there's all these claims about what a cold air will get you, and the problem is that it doesn't net anything in the real world. You might see something on a dyno, but you're not seeing anything in the real world. So stick with what you got. Oklahoma, man, thank you very much for the contribution, buddy. I appreciate that. Saying thanks for all the info, man. Thank you very much for hanging out. I appreciate it. But thank you very much. But yeah, Chuck. Now, I mean, yeah, if you can throw a K&N in there, that's fine. But for the most part, I wouldn't worry about it. Let's see. Oh, CJ's letting us know about some other YouTuber with a 4-liter V6 Mustang. All right. Let's see. Kevin saying, hey, Mason, a couple of weeks were you talking about the Comp 274 cam being too big a cam, or the 270 comp cam? The 274. Now, there are areas where the 274 makes sense, but it's not the right grind, or at least it's not the right profile. The Comp 270, you can make the Comp 270 work. Oddly enough, the first cammed car I ever drove, had, you know, Mopar, the modern stuff, had a Comp 270 in it. But there are significantly better grinds that are out now. Off the shelf, the HRT series from Comp is very good. If you want to get a cam that works even better than that, give Dr. Differential a shout. Put a cam together that's a little bit more tailor-made for what you're looking for. But, you know, when putting a cam in one of these modern Hemis, you know, especially with the 6.4 era, I should kind of point out that that's really what kicked a lot of this off. That was the cam. You had a 268, a 270, and a 274, and the 274 was just a pig. 270 would come alive, but it came alive kind of late, and the LSA is kind of wide on that cam, so it's trying to make power way further out than it needs to. And the 274, I've actually driven a car with a 274, but it was a 5.7, and that car was interesting because you could map the throttle at a dead stop and it would not even chirp the tires. And at about 4,000 RPM, it would start to come alive. So, just saying. Fun car, interesting driving experience. 510 saying, hey there, got the arm flex and the fist bump. I like it. Let's see. CJ is saying that you could add a ported 392 intake to a 5.7 along with long tube headers, a cam ported. Well, he's saying you can do a lot of stuff to a 5.7 and make it nasty, and it's true. But I will say this, you don't have to do that much to make it fast. But that's a good start. Dr. Dev saying, my experience with the 5.7 is out the work where it matters, Cam, and porting, just optimize what's there and let them spin up. I like the adjustments on the BBT recently. It can spin high, let it. Absolutely. Just make sure you have all the right parts. And that's the thing. I mean, when you start to look at how heavy the valve train is in one of these Hemis, you'll know real quickly why I say there is no such thing as a no spring required cam. Because if that lobe profile is aggressive enough to make these things work properly, you have to have springs. CJ's hanging out with 510. Let's see, Alvin's checking in saying, B Mason, what's up, Alvin? Saying, so I've got a Scat Pack charger so far. I've installed catless mid pipes and seem to be having some leaks and intermittent rattling. Would you recommend an exhaust sealant? No, I would not. I would say that there is probably a fitment issue going on. Something may have been over tightened, which is fairly common, or something's just not lined up properly. I mean, look, in a pinch, yeah, use the copper exhaust sealant, but I would prefer that you don't, mainly because, I mean, first of all, it's not going to hurt anything. You don't have any cats, so you're not going to hurt anything there. But those systems are typically designed to work well, those ball and socket style fittings. Rarely do you need anything. I mean, we would put it on cars at the shop just to ensure a tight seal with long tube headers. That's the big one. Long tube headers have a nasty habit of just the way that they would flex, and everything's like rigid, and it's a real long piece, and sometimes you could get an exhaust leak at the collector, which is a nightmare for tuning. Creates all kinds of problems. So anyway, food for thought. Take a look at it, make sure it's lined up properly, make sure you've got everything where it's supposed to be, make sure that none of the flanges are bent, because once a flange bends, it loses its ability to retain its shape. You know, it loses some of that springiness. And so really all you want is just a little bit of wrist on it. Once it comes up and seals, a little bit of wrist, and you're good. Don't, bend the flanges up. And if all that looks good, then yeah, it may just be a total fitment issue. You need to get some sealant for it. Let's see. See, Dr. Div saying, Hellcat lower and dry filter, keep the stock or at least stock placement, and the headlight hole keeps, helps bunches, or get it down and out of the engine bay. I've been running the stock filters, and when I did the flow testing, here's the funny thing. In fact, I just ended up throwing it away. It was one of the AEM dry filters, and I couldn't get it to register any airflow. I mean, that thing was terrible, but the stock filters did great. In fact, here's the funny thing. We've run cars on the dyno. I got to remember this. I think where it started to make a difference was 815-ish horsepower, removing the filter in the stock airbox. And it was funny because there were two cars, and I always bring this up because it's so funny how it just kind of worked out this way. We had one which was an upper and lower pulley, 275 upper. Well, basically it was Racer X's car. And then we had another car that was Racer X's car's clone, but it had a couple of differences. One, he was running a JLT intake, and two, he was running long tube headers. And three, he was running the stock gear. And so all of these things, you would say, well, that's not really the same. Well, it is in a way, because everything else was identical. Same fuel system, same injectors, same everything, just a few little bitty different bolt-ons. So are you ready to find out what the difference in power was? Keep in mind that it was running a 262 gear and not a 309. Drum roll, 15 horsepower. And part of that could be and for the car with the long tube, the JLT and the 262, part of that can be attributed to the fact that it had a 262, and the way dynos read power, that's just what it was seeing. It was just, there's an algorithm that goes along with wheel speed. Anyway, long story short, 15 horsepower is what separated the two cars. And strangely enough, it was as repeatable as the Sunrise. And so whether the stock airbox had the filter in it or not, whether this other car, whatever, it didn't matter at that kind of power number. Keeping in mind that about half of that number had something to do with the gearing. So you have two identical cars making that kind of power, and one of them has this cold air intake that's supposed to add, you know, well, if you pulley it up, it could add another 30 horsepower. Really? Where'd it go? Oh, and the long tubes were 2-inch long tubes. Car sounded really good. So that kind of illustrates my point, though. When we're talking about cold air intakes, and I get it, forced induction versus naturally aspirated, there's quite a bit of difference there. I get that. However, airflow is airflow, and when we're talking about outright airflow, one versus the other, KPA didn't look any different between the two cars. In other words, the actual amount of boost was practically the same between the two cars. So, you know, and that's the other thing, the car with 262s had, I think it was like a 1% more, and that's probably more based on load than anything else, just a little bit more boost. So, strangely enough, again, that's where that 262 comes into play, that gear. These are the things that you notice when you're on the dyno, and people ask about cold airs or this or that, and it's stuff that I've tested, not only on dynos, but at the drag strip. Very little of it actually, I guess the bottom line here is very little of it actually makes a legitimate difference. Let's see. 510 saying, that Duster rips, just got back in from cruising it. I'll probably go out and do another drive somewhere after dinner too. Love it. I like it. Dr. Div's talking to Alvin about the Permatex copper sealant. Absolutely. Alvin say he's heard about this weary. Don't be. We all use it. Oh, if you're gonna use it though, Alvin, listen to me. Use the product sparingly. And what you do, let me tell you the proper way to use this. Basically, you're going to take just a little bit on your finger, and you're going to smear it on whatever side that you're going to be, basically you put it on both sides. Just a real thin layer on one and a real thin layer on the other. Bring them together, bolt them together, and don't mess with it for a minute. But don't, please, for the love of God, don't go nuts with it, because that creates its own set of problems. Nice thin layer, just enough to get everything going. You can let it kind of tack up a little bit, and then you bolt everything together and you're good. Molten Mopar's checking in. I like it. What's up, brother? Let's see. Hilton Mo's saying, worth switching to a 5.7 truck intake for a 6.4 on a Ram. So yeah, there is. So the 6.4, literally know this, I just got through porting a truck manifold. And I've done enough of the 6.4s to where, I mean, I can do this stuff. I can kind of walk you through exactly the difference. But yes, the 6.4 has a larger cross section in the runner itself. So in terms of cross section, the smallest cross section of any of the polymers is going to be the LX Platform 5.7. It's small. They look identical. Just looking at them, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But you start getting in there and working them, and believe me, when I'm swapping out tools over and over again, there's a reason for that. And it's because the 5.7 is the smallest. Then the 5.7 truck, which is actually a really good intake, would come up next, and then the 6.4 variants are right after that. So yes, it's worth it. You'll have to play with your variable runner intake RPM a little bit, your actuation a little bit, but you're gonna want to kick that up just slightly. But it's a really good upgrade. And then there's some kind of trick intakes that run off of that thing, but yeah, it's a longer. The 6.4 is gonna have a slightly. Let me think about this. A slightly longer but slightly larger runner. Memory serves me correct just from working with him. Oh, Alvin saying, not throwing any code or anything. I've just been running it. Sounds like a very open air intake. Yeah, chances are your short-term knock, or not sorry, well, short-term knock could be freaking out too, but your short-term fuel trims are probably throwing fuel at it if it's got a leak down there. Let's see. Oh, CJ saying something about modern red Hemi. Cool. Chuck's checking in saying, my 5.7 shaker is a tire burner. I've walked away from a lot of cars with it. Seems like when I reach 100 miles per hour, the lightweight Euros that have raced me end up in my rearview mirror. I like it. They're a lot faster than you think. Oh, CJ is still hanging out with Modern Red. Talking about a Pro Charger. All right, cool. I'm saying, sounds like Euros are afraid of 100 plus speeds. Depends on what he's racing. Chuck saying, I know my place on the muscle car food chain. I would say I would love to put a 5.7 in an RX-8. I wouldn't disgrace a Hemi in an RX-8. RX-8's got a lot of pub when they first came out. I remember those. So I remember the RX-8s, but I don't remember them really all that fondly. I remember they got a lot of good press and then nothing. It was like the hype train just gone up and left the station on those things. One of my favorite, the fact that there's one that goes to the drag strip, not regularly, but enough to where I recognize the car. LS3 swap 350Z, man, that is probably on a scale of like 1 to 10. That's like as far as something that I would do LS swap wise, it's not already like a truck or something like that. I don't know. That's just seems like that platform always needed a V8. Let's see. Oh, Alan's asking, I meant to ask another question on an N8 stock 6.4. What is the optimal long tube primary diameter if later planning for cams, and optimal off-the-shelf cam for a 6.4? Well, 1 7/8 is where you're going to want to be. For the headers, I'd say go with Cook's. It's a slightly shorter primary, if memory serves me correctly. And what's the best off-the-shelf? Well, I mean, the cam menu at Dr. Differential is, in a way, it's off the shelf. So I'd say go with that first. And then, there's a lot of cams that aren't bad. But let me just caution you here. If you're putting a cam in your car, you have to have some reasonable expectations coming into this conversation. How much of a compromise do you want to make down low to make power up top? What is your definition of drivability? Well, there's a good one for you. Because the answer to that question will change within 6 months of you answering it today. So just know that coming in. But anywhere from mild to wild, you have to be honest with yourself. Are you cool with losing drivability, a snappiness of the throttle? Are you cool with that to get the theater of having a big lopey cam? Do you like doing highway pulls? Do you like the sound and the feel of a car that rips on the big end more than something that's very torquey and very responsive to your foot down low, like your Mopar is now? Kind of like Foxy is now. You know, to answer your question about cams, I'll tell you this. As you progress in this lifestyle, your choices for cams start to move further and further and further up on the page, if you know what I mean. So I guess in saying that, pick something that you know will be a compromise between outright power on the big end and stock. In other words, every cam that's out there, right? I can tell you some things that you might not want to go above. I wouldn't go above 226 on the cam on the intake side. And I really wouldn't, and again, this is just personal preference. I wouldn't sacrifice drivability I wouldn't sacrifice too much drivability and throttle response for outright power up top, unless you just plan on living at 4,000 to 6,000 RPM. And in that case, we got a cam for you. Call Dr. Differential. Let's see. Omar's asking, 6.4 stock pistons, 150 shot, nitrous with a plate system and progressive system. You can get away with it. Absolutely. A lot of guys do. It's a fun combination, as a matter of fact. But I'm going to caution you on something. Or let me preface this cautionary tale here, or at least my soapboxing is what I should have said. Let me ask you this. Are you taking the car to the drag strip? Are you going to have it on a real sticky tire? Or are you out there playing around with it on the street on, say, drag radials, or more to the point, really like, stock tires? And the reason why I ask is because it's not your engine that's the weak link here. Although, if you don't get the tune right, or the solenoid fails, either fuel or nitrous, could go either way. That's a different story too, but it doesn't matter what engine that happens in. Sorry, just, life experience starting to, come out of me. But seriously though, your transmission is going to be it's going to be your limiting factor. If you're on a real sticky tire, if you're going to the drag strip, I would limit it to about 100 shot. If you're playing around with the thing on the street, you never plan on taking the thing to the drag strip, you're only out just hooning, having fun, you can probably get away with it. Just know that, again, your transmission, from what we had seen, this was almost like clockwork. At 535-ish foot-pounds of torque to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno, that's when they started to slip. With a nitrous setup, and especially if the nitrous was coming in pretty hard. Now, if you stepped in the nitrous, that'll help, but it also kind of defeats. I mean, you don't want your nitrous to act like boost, but that's what you end up doing with it. So, you gotta. It depends on what you're gonna be doing with the car. But the pistons, I wouldn't worry about the pistons at that point. You're going to be, a shade cooler on the plugs. The tune is going to be there. For this assumes this, by the way, you're going a shade lower on the plugs. So a 7 heat range, you're going to be going with, a tune to accommodate this, this nitrous kit. So, in that respect, like I say, I mean, look, we get 130, 140 horsepower out of, low boost superchargers. I mean, that's typically 535 and 545 to the rear wheels. So there's that, but it's an easier hit. And that's the problem, is that nitrous, when you hit the button or when you pass through your window, it's on, and that's what stings you the most. So anyway, getting back to it. Chuck saying, regardless of who I can beat or not, I still love the shaker. Hell yeah. I like the shaker a lot. In fact, I kind of lament the fact that I didn't get the shaker initially. DSRT saying, do pipes only use HP or Diablo also for tuning? Primarily HP. I know that Alex can tune with Diablo, but I mean, if there's got to be a hell of a reason for him to be tuning it with Diablo, because he's basically dyed in the wool HP. As am I. I wouldn't know my way around it. I mean, you can play with it. Some people have said that Diablo is a little bit more intuitive. I don't know. I haven't played with it. I only use HP myself. And it's been, technically I only use HP, SCT, Pro, and Calcon and CalEdit, which would be the tweaker, which is what you see me data logging with the with Foxy. I'm using Calcon and CalEdit. Dr. Div saying a ported intake manifold works wonders on the Hemi. One of the things I thought wasn't worth it, but damn, I was wrong. I suggest it to all my customers, especially if they're doing cam and airflow mods. So let me just say this. Now, getting back to, I know we had talked a little bit about porting earlier, gave you guys a couple of, just anecdotal tips, things to, don't overthink it. Don't use too, don't try to get cute with the grit on your cartridge rolls. Trust me, you'll just end up cooking the plastic. You've got to get in there and actually get material out of there. But the other side of it is, how much horsepower do you gain? That's, everybody wants to know, how much horsepower do you gain? I tell you what, it depends on the condition of the intake manifold. And so Dr. Diff, when I'd gone and picked up some of those intakes, I had directed him to check out one of the short side, was it short side or no, it's a long side runners, I think, on that truck intake. And they were awful. I mean, they had so much casting flash in them. There was a lot of, not only was there a lot of casting flash, but just a lot of gunk and other stuff in there that can, help to hinder flow. But you'd be surprised how kind of jacked up some of these intakes are from the factory. So what I do is, when I port an intake, more what I'm doing is I am blueprinting the intake. I am making the intake work the way that the engineers designed the intake to work. There is a gain in flow, but I don't really consider it a gain. I really consider it more just capturing what you should have had to begin with. Because with the amount of casting flash that I've seen in some of these things, and by the way, you can't tell by just looking at the intake manifold. You can't go, oh, you're an intake manifold that's going to need a lot of work. The intake manifold has to come off. You flip it over and you start basically canoodling the runners to find out what's going on in there, or you just kind of shine your light. Sometimes that'll tell you as well. And man, I got to tell you, I've seen some that have been core shifted. Oh, what I mean by that is there's the intake manifolds are made of 2 or 3 different sections. The 5.7 car is made in 2 sections. The variable runner intakes have 3. So whenever I can't see my other hand, so it looks like I'm just doing this for no reason. And I'm doing this whole hand thing for no reason. Anyway, I'm still doing it, shit. Okay, so anyway, when those sections come together, one of them can shift as they're all basically being sonic welded and adhesed together. And what ends up happening is you get these funky protrusions into the runners, which can be as much as 1/8 of an inch or more, and they can be the entire diameter of that runner. So I've seen them sticking out on 2 sides to where it looked like there was like I've seen it going all the way around, and it looked like it just shuttered down in the middle of the runner. It was really weird. Anyway, I've been able to pick up some decent numbers with manifolds. Maybe 10 peak horsepower, but it's the power under the curve that they seem to pick up the most on, especially the torque. So I had the most I've picked up consistently, like across the board, was 13. So but that was on Shalandra, and that was on a manifold. By the way, that was on a manifold that was so messed up that it should have qualified as a factory defect. And I was able to make that factory defect manifold make more power than any other manifold. In fact, that manifold is now on Rob's car, that white Charger that's you've seen in some of Racer X's videos. That's the manifold that's on his car, and I am not kidding when I say that thing qualified to be a manufacturer's defect. The center section on that manifold is shifted to the back. It's shifted to the back by about 1/3 of an inch. So the runners are, It's a happy accident because the runner's actually kind of defaulted to be a little bit larger, but there's this goofy ridge that runs through the middle of the runner. So anyway, I was able to make that thing make more power, but that one initially was terrible. That one sucked. Had a lot of casting flash, the whole bit, and was able to pick up some power with that one. CJ's asking, what do you think of the 426 Gen 3 Hemi? Well, they've only used it in the drag pack cars, and it's a race-only engine, so I don't really think about it. The thing is that it's got to be in a production vehicle for it to really cross my radar. Crate motors really don't do it for me, and especially at the cost of some of these things, it's really not doing anything for me. So I think it's something that is doable, though, and I think that it's something that could go through every aspect of, I mean, we're talking use, misuse, and abuse testing. I think it's something that can work from a warrantability standpoint, but I don't know that it would be economically viable to put one together and put it through all of the testing only to use it in a handful of platforms. Think of the Hellcat, for example. It would probably be cheaper, although they would charge more for it, which would be more profitable, ergo that's what they would do anyway. But it would be cheaper to just run the Hellcat platform. In fact, I would go so far as to say that that would be the answer to the question that I've been asking for so long, which is, why does the Hellcat still exist? Think about it. The Red Eye is basically just a different supercharger and a couple of other things internally with the engine, of course, but it's basically just the next step for the Hellcat, or at least you would think it would be, right? But that's not necessarily the case. And so why does the Hellcat still exist out there at the price that it does? Guys, it's because developing a 426 to get it through all of the CAFE and all of the EPA and XYZ, PDQ, 1, 2, 3, and everything else it would have to go through, all the testing and all the certifications would probably be more expensive than just rolling out the Hellcat. And there may be some that would argue that, well, that's kind of a lazy way to go about it. You could be developing this 426 for the NA guys and everything else. And all I can say to that is, look, you can develop a 426 all day long. And you can say that, hey, here's your 426 Hemi. Ain't it great? Isn't it awesome? Only to turn around and have some soccer mom in a garden variety Hellcat Charger with the two kids in the back that just needs to get around you. You think she's wanting to race. She's just trying to get the kids home because one of them just freaking loaded up a diaper full of chili dog. Yeah, she's going to stomp a mud hole in the ass of that 426. Just getting around the thing, not even trying. So that's the headache with 426. How romantic do you feel about that number? Because I can tell you right now, all that romance goes away when taillights get smaller and smaller in your windshield. Broklahoma, no, man, you're good. Saying, sorry for the hammering. All the questions. This one is exhaust on my 15 RT Challenger. With HRT Stage 2, I have a 2.5-inch Borla attack. When would the 3-inch be necessary? What horsepower? You won't get there. You're not going to see a huge gain in power, at least not for the money that you would spend by going from 2.5 to 3. The Hellcats come with a 2 3/4 system, so that tells you anything. Now again, forced induction, and I get that, but still, it would basically, that just means it's not as effective. It doesn't need the scavenging, so, because it's got this, 100-pound scavenger sitting right on top of it with that compressor, right? But go to 3-inch for the tone. It sounds really good. But as far as a horsepower number, hell, I'd say somewhere around 550, somewhere in that range, I would probably start to consider it. I just don't think you're going to need it anytime soon. Alvin's talking about the RX-8. The Remedy's engine was definitely an inferior engine to the 13B from the 80s. Ports were all screwed. Well, and see, that's the thing. And it's a bummer that they keep trying to get the rotary to work. I mean, I get it, the apex seal issue. It's basically just a real fancy way to make a two-stroke in a way, with the way that it fires. There's a lot. It's not a two-stroke, but it is. It's just, there's a lot of weird things going on with that engine, and it's difficult to keep chasing that dragon. It works, but damn if it doesn't have a lot of baggage to come along with it. Ice Willow comes in. I'll stick with my Tesla, thank you. Actually, a lot of cool electric stuff's coming down the pipe, y'all. So, Porsche's got their new electric car. Obviously, Tesla's doing really well with theirs. A lot of neat stuff coming on that electrical front. So, and I'm excited about that too, because I'm kind of a fan of that. So when I used to live in Northern California, I lived just north of just south of San Francisco. And, heading up to in La Honda and, right off of Blackhawk and all of that, you would see the guys with the Tesla Roadsters. This is back in the day. And you would always see them on the side of the road smoking. They'd be up there beating the hell out of those things, and it would overheat the speed controller. Doug does say, putting a cam in your car, reasonable expectations. Cam surge. That's part of it. It can be. It depends on the cam. And that's the other issue. I mean, it's, you've got to kind of pick and choose your battles. When you're getting a cam, you're going to be giving up something somewhere normally. And that's just the way that it works. Stock camshafts are designed for drivability, emissions, low speed responsiveness. That's what they're designed to do, and they do that really well. And if they're paired up with a good set of heads, like these Gen 3 Hemis, they do a fantastic job of not only making great torque, they're very responsive, and they're a lot of fun to drive. You don't want to take that quality away from the Hemi, because you need that because of the weight of these cars. And I get it, if you got an 8-speed, you got a lot of gear reduction going for you. I understand all of that, but believe me, it's all relative. You take it away and you're going to notice it in a big way. And then you got to make sure that you're making plenty more up top to make up for the loss down low. And I'm not talking necessarily only about wide open throttle. See, that's where guys get it wrong. One of the most fun things about a 392 car is that it is responsive, it's snappy, it's very frisky, it's wanting to have a fun time all the time. Much more so than the Hellcat in a lot of ways. But when you take that quality away from that car with the wrong cam, you've got a heavy car with an intake manifold that doesn't really want to make power past, I mean, truth be told, if you've got the right cam, it'll make power to 6,600, but you've got to have the right cam and the right person tuning it. But the funny thing about it is that when you start getting into putting a cam in one of these things, you'd be surprised how many people walk away from the experience a little bit less enthusiastic than they were on the front end. And it's just setting the right expectations. Are you buying it for the sound, or are you buying it because you actually want to make power? That's the tough part. Hang on. 6.2 Hemi power. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Man, thank you. Saying, hello, I'm thinking about upgrading my Hellcat with a 285 10%. So you're going 285 10% lower, 1250 FIC injectors with twin pumps, with all supporting driveline mods added, wanting a 10.0 at 135 range. Is this realistic, Ben 1090 stock? Well, yeah. A couple of things though. what wheel and tire combination are you running now? And the other question that I have is, where do you live and what is your altitude? See, here's the thing. Revlon has been 1016, 1017, and 1019, but also live basically at 0 DA. In other words, or I should say at 0 altitude, and I get negative DA fairly regularly. But your combination of a 285 and a 10% lower, you haven't mentioned E85, and I would start to look at E85 with that combination, especially if you're at low altitudes. If you're at higher altitudes, you may be able to get away with that combination on pump gas with a little bit of boosting, or Torco, basically octane booster, but you're going to have to be realistic about what kind of fuel you're going to run. But from the sounds of it, you might be at a higher altitude if you've only run a 10.9 stock. I'm assuming that's on a drag radial or something like that. To put things into perspective, most stock Hellcats down here in good air will cover a 1070 or a 1080. So sounds to me like you're in a little bit higher altitude. I think your expectations, you're going to overshoot your expectations actually. But I want to make sure that you're running it on the right fuel if you are at a higher altitude, because you can get that 10.0 or even in the 9s with just a 285 upper running on 93 octane with a little bit of boostane added to it just for good measure. So, but yeah, the 1250 FIC's good choice. Talking about twin pumps. So it sounds to me like that may be hinting at E85. But yeah, that number is very doable. I mean, I'm running, when I run 1020s, I'm typically at 135 miles an hour with my car, and it's stock boost with a gear. So just kind of give you an idea as far as where you're at. But let us know, what is your what's your altitude where you live, because that will help quite a bit. But thank you very much for the contribution, man. I appreciate that. Let's see. Hang on just a second. Get back where I was here. Okay. Raging Bull's asking, would a Cam 6.4 still pass emissions? Sure. You can make it pass emissions. It wouldn't be actually all that hard. It would depend on the cam, really. I mean, if you go something really nasty, you're probably going to get a little bit of a side eye from your tech. But, you know, if you're running catalytic converters, and you might, you know, pass an inspection, we're talking visual also. But yeah, no, we've passed, you know, had cars pass without any big issues. Depends on where you live, though. And no, it is not emissions legal normally, the aftermarket cams. Alan saying, recording all this to look back in the morning. I like it. Oh, Chuck's saying the Kia V6 Stinger, those are actually fun cars. Was a formidable opponent from a dig. Initially it was quicker, but it was lights out in the quarter mile. Talking about the Euro car that he was racing. Omar saying yes and yes. I like it. I've been wanting to race a Stinger. Set our aspirations a little bit higher than a Stinger, guys. Chuck said, I can't race everyone everywhere. I like my insurance rates where they are. I'll revisit this when I get my LCAT someday. CJ's asking, what are the plans for the 72 GMC C25 and the Fox Body Mustang? Well, the C25 is awaiting a transmission rebuild on its way to other things. That thing's just mainly going to be a cruiser. Initially, I'll probably get the 400 rebuilt at some point, but it's not going to be that big of a deal of a build. It might get a set of aluminum heads to go along with the aluminum intake that's going to go on it, but I mean, it may be a different carburetor at some point. Maybe, well, electric fuel pumps almost certainly going to be a thing. you know, that thing's just going to be a lot of fun. It's only going to exist for cruising and, you know, lighting the tires up here or there, but that's really about it. The Fox body is just keeping her clean, keeping gas in the car. That's keeping oil changed. That's it. You know, I had thought about, and I was going to touch on this earlier, and I just didn't get a chance to hit on it. One of the things that is so endearing about this car is just how torquey it is. It's very responsive. And I was talking about, you know, the difference between, you know, cams and in some of the Hemis where it, even though they make more horsepower, it numbs them in some of the areas. It's kind of the same with this car. I've been thinking about putting a different intake on the car, primarily just to get rid of this GT40. Truth be told, I've never been a big fan of the GT40 intakes. They work really well, though, in terms of building and making torque below 4,500 RPM. So in that respect, they do really good, although they don't. Just by this Topo Chico, look at this bad boy bubbling up like that. You know it's trying to blow up in my crotch. Trying to give me some Crotcho Chico is what it's trying to do. Damn plastic bottle. Anyway, won that fight. Anyway, I was thinking about putting a different intake on it, like an Edelbrock RPM. That would move the power band over where I think it kind of needs to be in a way, over about 300 or 400 RPM, and it'd start making peak power around 55, 56 as opposed to 52. I don't know that it would affect horsepower too much. Also thinking about a System X intake for it. But that's about the only thing I would do. It's a low compression 351. It was originally put together for boost. And because the car had a supercharger on it. And in fact, what was it, like 16 years ago, whatever it was, this was my first car with a, no, it was about 18 years ago. This was my first car with a supercharger. It was my first time to ever tune a supercharged car was my car. It was this car, literally that car. So, I don't know. I really like the way that it drives now. And, oh, by the way, to tie that in with what we were talking about, I'm going to get here eventually. It's the partial throttle response. It's the partial throttle push that you give up when you start to put shorter runner intakes or longer duration camshafts in your car. Or at least you lose that down low. Now it gets pretty exciting up top. The problem is that it's so soft down low that when it does come on, it's just not as, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Satisfying. The fun thing about Foxy, let me put it to you like this. I can be cruising along in fourth gear, say at 3,000 RPM, just run, and then go bop, and then pop the throttle, and it's just like it's like an electric motor. It's just rap, you know, just super responsive. With any other intake, it wouldn't do that. And really, it was even more responsive when it had a smaller set of heads on it. It had a set of GT40Y heads on it that had been worked a little bit, but not too much. Now it's got the AFR 185s on it. The thing is it was more responsive with the GT40 heads on it. It just didn't make the power. It was down by about 16 or 18 horsepower. But that gives you an idea, though, as far as how, you know, what is the difference in performance? It's the difference between partial throttle drivability and excitability, just as far as it being twitchy. That's really the difference that it makes when you go with a longer duration cam and all this other stuff. You're going to start to lose that. So anyway, I digress on that. Let's see, 6.2 Hemi power, man. Thank you very much. Asking MS109 or GT260 fuel. Let's see, our fuel tracks are Cecil County, and MIR Tires are 17 by 10, 305, 45, 17 at sea level, and those 10.9s were with 350 DA. We need to chat then, because I wouldn't be running MS109. GT260, you're good. Just don't run GT260 Plus, the way that you sit. Tracks are sealant and MIR. Okay. Tires are 17 by 10, 305, or wheels are 17 by 10. The tires are 305, 45, 17 at sea level. Ditch the MS109. Run a softer mix of GT260 with 93 octane. Run a mix of about 1 gallon of GT260 for every 5 gallons of gasoline that you're getting. And that should put you in a pretty happy place in terms of where your short-term knock retard would be. But yeah, at your... And don't run, try to make your passes at about half a tank. But that should put you right in that 1070, 1080 range based on your elevation. Let's see. And thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution, my friend. Let's see. Hang on just a second here. Get back to it. All right. Dr. Dip's asking, or saying, I wouldn't go above his Joker cam on a 5.7 and a high roller, aka Joker 2 on a 6.4. You just lose too much down low. That is very true. And, you know, there are limits to every combination. And the combinations are what's key. It's not any one single component, and it's how those components basically work together. It's a concert, not a solo act. Alvin's saying, I've heard crazy rates on Hellcats. Yep. Stacking them deep, sell them cheap. Nine Chucks are saying, Ram 5.7 with Whipple supercharger with stock Whipple tune, wants to increase boost, but worried about trans having problems with more power. That's the one thing you need to worry about with it. I mean, you can get away with a little bit with the setup that you got, but you've got to take a look at the trans really first as far as your limiting factor. Mr. Blacktop's checking in. Hey, hope you're having a good weekend. Fist bump. I like it. Thank you very much. See, I wanted to hear your opinion on what should be the next set of tires for a 2020 wide-body Hellcat, given the short lifespan of the 305 P0s. Man, depends on how you're driving the car and how often you're, I mean, is it a daily if you're just out kind of playing around with it? I gotta tell you, man, I'm starting to warm up a little bit to these G2 Nittos, the 555 R2s. I like those a lot, mainly because it's a good tread pattern for wet weather. If you're not driving the car too often, it's not a daily. It's a good tread if you do run into rain, and it happens. I mean, I've been, weirdly enough, it's funny because I get hit with these little downpours or something like that, especially when the seasons are changing down here in Houston. So wet weather compatibility is kind of important. But and here's the thing: if I'm not running that tire on the car, man, I don't know. I'm thinking the summer version of the P0 is probably the way that I would go. I like the P0s a lot. And if I weren't running the drag radials, I'd probably say I'd be running a set of 888s or something like that. That'd be the other option. Just depends on what you're doing with the car. Do you need the tires to just be a tire? I mean, you're really not needing them to be super sticky. Or do you need something that's going to, and in that case, do you need something that's going to be able to last a long time? Or is that really not all that's necessary, and you're just looking for a tire that, is going to hook and it's going to, do what tires are supposed to do, right? So anyway, for me, it would be P0 Summer / Nitto 555 R2s. Still can't believe they're... Anyway, and that's mainly because of their wet weather performance. In fact, if you haven't seen it, check out... when I'm part of the product review that I did, or the string of reviews that I did on that tire, was me running it in wet weather. And if you notice, I'm in the left-hand lane and I'm passing people as I'm going down the street. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, there's really not another tire that I would put on the back of the car. You know, ET Street SS. Actually, another tire that I've been wanting to try, and I just haven't had a chance to, is the Mickey Thompson. What the hell is it? Now, for the name just blew right out of my head. Anyway, not the ET Street SS, but their street version of that, the non-drag radial version of that. Been thinking about maybe looking at that tire as an alternative to the Nittos for the daily setup for the car. Less expensive, they probably don't hook as well, but here's the twist. The Tri-5 R2, if I'm being honest, doesn't hook that great. It just doesn't. And I mean, it hooks fine for what it is, but it's real easy to haze those tires at street pressures of, say, 30, 32, 33 PSI, whatever you're running. It's pretty easy to still light those things up. More so, I'll admit, more so than the outgoing Tri-5. So, take that for what it's worth. You get much, much better wet weather performance. Overall performance is basically like just a good tire. It's ugly as hell, but I mean, it works great. And with the new wheels that it have on it, it masks some of the things that was getting on my nerves before. So at least by that rationale, since that goes away, I got to give the tire 2 thumbs up. But it's only because of the wheels that I'm running now. But, you know, again, it's just going to fall back on what you're looking for that tire. But that would be my kind of short menu list. Alan's saying, Doctor, I'm going to check the site. Very nice. Chuck's saying, yes, more power is more cash. Very much so. It's rarely not that case, but you know how it is. Let's see. HU37 is asking, is it worth it to add a cam that has a lobe separation angle that promotes exhaust scavenging on the 392 with the rest of the specs being similar to the stock cam? In other words, what HU37 is asking is, if I have a cam and it is a 577 564 lift cam, and instead of being 121 lobe separation angle, what would it act like if I tightened up the LSA to promote scavenging? What you would have is a small version, or a version of a cam that some folks have used in the 5.7s. Early on, it was kind of a tight lobe separation angle, very MDS, I'm sorry, not MDS, very variable cam timing friendly type of a setup. The problem is that you wouldn't have enough duration, and not having the duration on the intake side is what would sting you the most. So what I would suggest is, although it's a good idea, it's kind of a place to start. I think a lot of us that put cams together are always toying around with those ideas like, well, wait a minute, what if I did take this, even if it was 577 and 577, if I took that cam, tightened up the lobe separation angle from the exhaust side, left the intake lobe right where it's at, and just drag that exhaust over, make it about a 110 lobe separation angle. 577, 577 lift, you could go, the 216 on the intake side, and you could go, I don't know, 220 on the exhaust side. What would that act like? That would be a fun little cam. Problem is it would get outworked by pretty much every other cam that's out there, the 220, 230 family of cams. which is to say 220 intake, 230 exhaust. That's a popular happy medium for a lot of the Hemis. Just keep in mind that two cams can be 220 and 230 with the exact same intake center line and with the exact same overall duration, advertised duration, and still perform wildly different based on what the cam profile, the load profile itself looks like. So to say, you know, duration, you have to know the load profile. A real aggressive load profile will act completely different, even with all the advertised specifications being out there. And I know this because my cams are obnoxiously aggressive. As Cash is saying, but that new Hummer though, yeah, if y'all haven't seen the electric Hummer, that thing is a beast. Let's see. Oh, Alvin's, they're talking about, I guess, interest rates and the insurance carriers. My insurance is pretty low, but I'm also a very respectable driver. Which reminds me, I've got to get my defensive driving stuff put together because I got to take that. it. CJ saying, it's fun to drive fast and mod as long as you have the cash and knowledge to do it right. A lot of times the knowledge to do it right will predicate somebody not spending the cash because they know what to do better. They know there's other ways to do it. Oh, Dr. Differential's hanging out with Alvin. Let's see. Oh, Dr. Div saying, it's not always about how much you gain. Most of it's where it comes in at. These manifold stock can damn near cut your finger. Absolutely trash. Just get it to flow properly and it works great. Absolutely. CJ's asking, have you considered porting a Coyote intake manifold or any GM LS manifolds? I've ported LS2 manifolds before. None of the Coyote stuff. Dr. Div saying, or maybe where you feel it come in. Also an LS6 manifold. I messed with that a little bit. That LS6 was real clean though. Chuck's saying, Brian, you're teaching us with every session, bro. Oh, thanks, man. It's okay if you talk with your hands. I do it too. Oh yeah, I get, especially when I start getting excited, because then I feel like, I don't know, I end up putting on like a show, you know. I don't know. If I were a caveman, I'd be the guy that would, like, you know, to tell the story. I would probably be that guy, you know, because, you know, I don't know. I can bring you into my mind with my hands. Anyway, getting back to it. Oh yeah, Doc Div saying 13 horsepower is badass for an intake shape up. Yeah, I mean that thing was pretty brutal, but it had a lot of potential, so that's why I decided to go with it. In fact, here's the funny thing about that intake manifold. That intake manifold was actually bound for the scrap heap. It was part of what was left of an engine, a stock 6.4 that let go on the dyno, and that intake went to that car. Let's see. Chuck saying, I watched a car auction from Arizona on History Channel tonight. Some amazing cars up there. $100,000 on up through the Hemi Cuda, etc. Yeah, there's a lot of real expensive stuff out there. Alvin filling a diaper full of chili dog. Well, it's true. Shawnee's saying, I run 10.0 at 136 with just a 9% lower drag pack Hellcat 8-speed. That is correct. Junior's asking, hey there, B, what are your thoughts on a 392 with a big turbo? Packaging is going to be my first concern, really, more than anything else. There's guys that have done it. I've seen it done. You know, they respond just like every other engine responds to boost. I mean, there's no such thing as an engine that loves boost or hates boost or anything like that. They all respond well to it. The only question is about how can you package it in this LX platform, and that's the kicker. And the reason why I say that is because with as big as these cars are, there's not a hell of a lot of room underneath the hood on these things. Anyway, I've seen them mounted on the driver's side single turbo. It was a hybrid. I can't really remember the specs. It's been a minute or two, and I didn't work on the car either. Anyway, I've seen one mounted on the driver's side, and I've seen, well, twins mounted underneath the car, but I don't know, man. I mean, if you can package it and make it work, then it's kind of turbos are the cheat code, right? You make the most power. They make the power no matter what the altitude is. As long as you've got enough compressor to make boost, it will make that boost. So I would say that if you're willing to go through the headache of packaging it, I would say it's a good way to go. I would never talk anybody out of it. CJ is saying electric cars are not as environmentally friendly as people think. I've actually had that conversation very recently. I had to educate somebody on what all goes into the batteries and the mining of the batteries and the shipping and everything else. I want to say that there was a study, and you guys can fact check this, but the gist of the story is this. Something to do with an all-electric car versus a Range Rover. So if you're doing a search, if you're bored to tears, can't sleep, it's something along those lines. And I cannot remember the timeline that it took for the electric car to, this is including harvesting the material for the batteries, the transportation of this, that, and everything else back and forth. I think it was for it was for a Prius. It was a Prius versus a Range Rover. And I could be wrong about the timeline, but just for the sake, I'm just going to use a number that's not the right number, but it was somewhere close, I'm guessing. Like 10 years. You would have to drive the vehicle for 10 years for it to be a net gain in environmental friendliness, if that's a thing. But the twist was, how long do the batteries last, and do I need to get new batteries now? And then what about the recycling of the batteries that I'm turning in? Does that start the clock over? Anyway, this was a hotbed thing, and it was something that a lot of people were talking about, and it got politicized just like everything else. I hate politics in a way that, like, I can't even put into words, because I'm more interested in facts and what's real when it comes to, if I'm looking at a car going, man, I really want to be environmentally friendly, I want to leave the planet better than, I got nieces and nephews. I want to make sure that they've got a fun planet to play in. And so I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, well, is it really beneficial, or is this like a shell game? You know what I mean? And with these batteries and everything else. And so when I was looking into it, it was hard to get really solid data, but I'm in the manufacturing industry, and so I'm looking at it from a manufacturer standpoint. I follow the money. Okay, so where do the batteries come from? How did the batteries come to exist? What's that process? What are the laws in that country where this raw material is harvested? And you start to look at it from that point of view, and you look at each thing as a line item. At the end of the line item comes your sum of, in this case, environmental points, if you want to call it that. Is it good or is it not good? And I want to say, again, it took the car forever to match what this big Range Rover, was going to do. So anyway, yeah, I literally just had that conversation. Dr. Dude's saying 40 watching, only 5 likes. Chuck's checking in. Let's see. CJ likes the 392 that his dad's got. Fun car. Bob Barr say, why do I always fall asleep halfway through the Cosby Show? I don't know. Do you wake up sore? Dr. Dude's saying, MS-109 is good stuff. It's good stuff if you tune for it. Shawnee's asking, B, caught half of the story. Are you going with some bias ply Hoosiers for your drag pack? No, I'm going with the new 28, 10, 5, 17 radial. They're called, if you want to look them up, they're the Hoosier bracket radials. And again, the cool thing about them is they're a lot lighter, at least advertised weight is shown to be a lot lighter. But I don't have any experience with this tire. Again, I've got experience with the ET Street if we're talking about bias ply, but just not on this platform. But in their marketing, they're saying that it's kind of specifically made for Chargers, Challengers, Mustangs, and Camaros. Basically, it's the drag slick for the independent rear suspended modern hot rod. So we'll see how they work, hopefully. 62 Power saying, thank you for your help. Thanks for hanging out, man. 62 Power saying, Dr. Diff, absolutely it is. Chuck saying, I like your 5.0 better than the one I used to own. It was a 96 5.0 5-speed manual. That would have been a 95. 96 would have been a modular motor. But I see what you're saying, buddy. Oh, so he's saying, saw a GT40 intake for sale on Facebook Marketplace in Orlando for $1,100. Yeah, tell me about it. And I'll take that a step further. This would be the double unicorn GT40 intake because it is a Lightning, because this thing has a 351 in it. So it is a Lightning lower GT40 upper. I know what you mean. So what the hell were they smoking? The Cobra intake and 96, 97 Explorer intake flow a little better and way less money. The reason why everybody loves the GT40 is because of nostalgia. When you pop the hood and you see this thing, and by the way, in terms of performance, I've dynoed all of these things. GT40 of any sort, whether it's GT40 tubular, Cobra, the Explorer, GT40P, whatever the case might be, they all literally put the exact same amount of power to the rear wheels. In fact, all of them, I mean, they all look identical. You cannot tell the two apart. The big difference, though, with the GT40 is that there is no heat soak. So, at least with the upper intake, it doesn't get hot. Not the way that the Cobra or the Explorer would get hot. If that even means anything to you. So, let's see. Oh, we got everybody jumping on. Last year, the 5.0 was 95. Yes, but do you know how to tell at a glance the difference between a 94 and a 95 Mustang? And when I tell you and you look it up, you'll be like, oh my God. This is just with the car going down the road. Has nothing to do with the engine. Kelvin Collins saying, Mustang on a Mason on a 96 Z28 auto, will you need more than headers and exhaust to be over 300 rear wheel horsepower? Yeah, you will. So you'll need a lot more than that. 96, let's see, that was not an LS one? Is that still the LT one? Oh man, now I'm starting to lose it. I can't remember if that was that may have been the LT. And in that case, yeah, you'd probably need, for sure, headers, a tune. It'd be real tough to get that thing over 300 if it's an LT. If it's an LS, you could get there kind of easily, but not. And we're talking dyno jet numbers here too. Exhaust and a tune will get you close. I'll get you about 285. Let's see. Chuck Rice saying it may have been a 95. Probably was. Oh yeah, Josh was saying, don't forget the thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up, y'all. Shawnee's saying also had a Challenger with a shaker and he loved it. Fun car. Chuck's hanging out with Sean right now. Dr. is saying, B Mason, no MS-109. I've had good luck with it. Interesting. Care to explain why? A couple of reasons. One, I get Sunoco at the track that I go to. So there's that. MS-109, if you're tuning on it, is fine, but I wouldn't just run it on a stock tune. It's in fact, I want to say, what is it? Isn't it the same ratio as GT260 Plus? I think it's got 13% ethanol content. Anyway, you can tune on it and it'll do just fine. I like 260 GT because it's 10% ethanol. And that's what I've had the best results with no tuning. Just as a bump in octane. Eric's saying, what up, dude Mason? What's up, man? Chuck Rice is asking, Brian, is your Hellcat Tour Red or Mango? It is actually Redline Red. It is the darker red, the more luscious red, like lipstick red. Eric's saying, I have a friend that runs 315s on the stock Scat Pack 9-inch rim. Thoughts on that? Yeah, I think you know what my thoughts are on that. Bad idea. He says he's never had any issues, but I feel like he's really pushing it. So here's the thing. I mean, I'm not saying that the dang car is going to slide off into a ditch if you do this. What I'm telling you is that your contact patch looks pretty jacked up. That's number one. And number two, I mean, you're going to have a tire lifespan on that thing that's not going to be that long. And the problem is, if you underinflate them, it's going to cup. And if you overinflate them, they're going to, or normal inflate them, I should say, they're going to crest. So basically they're going to bulge in the middle. You're going to wear out the middle of the tire, and that can be kind of dangerous. So it's just not the right width tire for that rim. HE37 is correct. Dang, hang on a second. Yarmir, what's up, man? Thank you very much. Saying, what are some of the best diffs, very high performance for an 08 SRT8 Charger? Already has 1400 horsepower drive shaft, shop axles, Hoosier slicks, and drag rim. So he's asking, what's the best diff for an 08 SRT8? So that is going to be a gay trag unit. Depends on where you're at, man, in terms of power, but you can get different ratios. Even with that gay trag, I would say that, well, here's what I recommend. I like the 370 for NA cars, 309 for boosted cars, but 370 for sure, and some NA cars as well. I'm sorry, and some boosted cars as well. If you're rocking an 08, then that's going to be a NAG 1 car. It's a 5-speed automatic, and they take to the 370 very well. I would not suggest going with the 3.92 though. It's a little bit too much gear. You wind up at about 3,000 RPM at about 80 miles an hour, and if you've got any exhaust in that thing, it's going to drive you nuts. But if you go with the 370, I think that'll be a lot better combination for you in total. It'll be punchy down low. It'll be fun just in general. And it won't be too buzzy on the highway. But thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution. And yeah, when it comes to differentials, you're not going to do much better than gay trag. The stuff that you already have, there's no aftermarket solution unless you want to go with, I think MMX has a 9-inch conversion that you can go to, but unless you're pushing a ton of power, it's really not worth it. If you're, even up to 600-700 horsepower, that gay trag will hold it just fine if you've got everything else working alongside of it. It would also depend on if you're taking the car to the drag strip or if you're just playing around on the street. One of the key things to consider is the type of loading that's going to be applied to that unit. And obviously slicks on a track is one thing. Street tires on the street, it's going to be a lot easier on components. So in my opinion, go with the 370. It's really hard to go wrong unless you're making really big power. that's the way that I would go. But thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate it. Very much, in fact. HU37 get back saying Mickey Thompson Street Comp is probably the tire you were thinking of. I think that is the tire that I'm thinking of. And I'd like to hear from you guys. If y'all have tried that tire, man, let me know how it worked out for you. Jeffrey Bender's checking in and saying, what up, B? Got my scat down to 1139 at 118.89 with some of this good fall air. I like it. That is awesome. That is nearly, so give you an idea, Shalandra, that is identical to what Shalandra ran. So, I mean, it is down to, we're quibbling over hundredths of a second and really nothing in mile an hour. So, yeah, that's awesome, man. Congratulations. And again, Yarmir, thank you very much. Hopefully I answered your question, man. Thank you very much. Xcash is saying cam and exhaust can get 300 on an LT1. I figured you would need a cam. The only LT1 or LT anything I've ever had was in my 96 Corvette. I'm sorry, 94 Corvette. Wanted in 96. Let's see. Smoking 05 saying, howdy B, do you run a 180 thermostat? I do. Saying I had a Murray brand 180 that only lasted 2 months before it started sticking. I'm trying to Summit Racing 180 now. And Sean's checking out saying, no, everybody. So you, my friend, are dealing with the same thing that our good buddy Rob has been dealing with his car. He has gone through not one, not two, not three, but he is on his 4th thermostat. So just keep an eye on things. He ended up going with a Reich thermostat. Don't ask me how to spell it because I can't, but it's Reich. I think if you just mouth it, do the voice to text, it'll get you where you need to be. And I think he's going to go well with that. I think he went with a 170. That's probably the same thermostat that I'm going to end up putting in Revlon and bring that temperature down by about 4 or 5 degrees. But yeah, the issue is kind of a well-known thing. I don't know why it is so difficult or seemingly difficult to engineer a thermostat, something that has existed literally since the automobile. How is it so difficult to engineer a thermostat? I don't know, but I know Rob's been going through hell with his, and I can't explain why. Although I will say this, I have had a thermostat fail. It was the first 180 that I got. What I did is I just went to O'Reilly's and said I need a 180 thermostat for that car. They go, here, it's got a lifetime warranty. And I said, thank you. And I installed it. So there are other options available, but best of luck to you with that thing because I know how much of a headache that can be. Lamont, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for the contribution. Doesn't have a question, just saying thanks for all the education, brother, man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate the contribution. Definitely going to good. I mean, you're seeing some of the fruits of that. So the next product that we're going to be trying out are going to be those Hoosiers, and I'm really excited about that. In fact, it's kind of cool. I get an opportunity to check and I really don't come into these tests, by the way, with any preconceived notions. You guys know that, when I worked at the shop, I was the guy that got all the data on the cars. It didn't matter. It could have 300 horsepower. It could have 1,000 horsepower to the rear wheels. It literally didn't matter to me. I was just there to collect data. High load, high RPM conditions, which is basically wide open throttle conditions. It never really mattered to me the type of power that the car was making. I was just collecting data, and it's the same thing for the products that I test. It could be tires, it could be a leaf blower. If you haven't seen my leaf blower thing, by the way, check that out. By the way, I did use that to help clean up after the porting of intakes. That variable trigger feature came in real handy as to not make a mess. Anyway, getting back to it, though, I guess where I'm trying to go with that is the only thing that I'm worried about with the Hoosiers, and the only thing that's giving me a little bit of a, I don't know if you can call it a fear point, is will it be as stable as the ET Street R's at speed? And that would be the only question that I have, but I haven't heard of anybody complaining about them. In terms of air pressure, I'm going to just keep them at 22. That's where I've been running the ET Street R's, anywhere between 22, 23. That's kind of the sweet spot. So in talking to the guys about it, they were saying, yeah, kind of stick within that same parameter. So we'll give it a go. There's only one little twist here, though. I'm hoping that they come in next week, because if they do, I can get them mounted and on the car. But I've got to get them mounted. I've got to run them in on the street, have them rebalance, because the wheels are going to turn inside of those tires. Get those rebalanced, get them back on the car, and then get ready, because on Friday, if the weather's nice, that's the next opportunity that we're going to have. And the DA is supposed to, we might have mineshaft air. So as you can imagine, and with me having a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Jacked up week this coming week. It's going to be basically, it's going to be, it's going to be in Goodfellas, where he's, mixing the sauce and he's driving and everything. He's looking at helicopters and everything. That's going to be me this week coming up. I've got so much crazy stuff going on, but I got to get this thing to the drag strip, because I've got to get data on the car to make sure that it's going to act right for when the temperature really drops and we start hunting for those 10-0s with this thing. And who knows, those Hoosiers might be the ticket to do it, because they are significantly lighter than the Mickey Thompsons, and they're slicks, so they should hit pretty hard out of the hole. They're supposedly designed for these independent rear suspension cars. We'll see how they work. But thank you very much, Lamont. I truly appreciate that very much, my friend. Doug saying, 08's an Ag 1, right? Yep. Beat me to it. Yep. Chuck Rice saying, night, Sean. Keep the throttle heavy. I like it. See you, Sean. We'll catch you on the next one, brother. Thank you again. Oh, Lamont again. Thanks, man. Saying, B, I'm getting a 392 swapped into the 2012 Durango RT, and the shop recommended keeping the 5.7 intake. Thoughts? Yeah. I don't know why they would want to do that. The 3.0, because the 2012, so he may be recommending doing that because of the short runner actuator valve. So what's going on with that, and it's not going to really hurt anything per se. I mean, you're going to lose a little bit of torque down low. It'll run great through the mid-range, and it might lose a little bit up top, but don't worry so much about that. With the power that you're going to gain, I don't think you would notice that a lot. But here's the thing. What it looks like they're doing is they're going to use your existing ECU, and there's no way for them to control a short runner valve actuator with the computer that you have. Now, there is a way to make it work. It involves a window switch like what you would use in a Nitrous kit that would actuate the valve at a particular RPM, the same way that you would kick on your Nitrous at a certain RPM, that it would, instead of kicking on the Nitrous, it would just actuate the valve. He's probably trying to get away from doing that. What I would maybe take a look at, if it fits within the parameters of the build and the budget and hood clearance, I'm guessing, and everything else, but take a look at a 6.1 intake. That would be one way to go, or the Edelbrock intake. That might be a better way to go to maintain the power, because it is going to make more power with those two manifolds than it will with that that Durango, the 5.7 intake. So just something to consider. And I can't remember. Yeah, your 392 is a true 392, not a stroked 5.7. I've seen it go both ways with the trucks. I've seen them go stroker 392, which would be a 5.7 with a longer stroke, and I've also seen them run a regular 6.4 in those trucks, running the 6.4 truck intake. So again, you've got some options there. The worst option is to run the 2012 Durango intake, although it is the easiest to run with. It's not going to make the most power. But just like what we were talking about before, it's going to be snappy with that intake. So if outright power isn't necessarily what you're going for, and you want something that's a little bit simpler, which is usually the better route anyway, go ahead and run that intake. See how you like. If you like the way the thing drives, leave it alone. It'll be a lot easier to tune. You've already got the parts there, and you're not going to have to start diving into, well, do I go to 6.1? Do I get an Edelbrock? What do I do about it? Might not even have to worry about that. Try it out and see what you think. I just want you to know what's out there and the benefits or the drawbacks to each. So 6.4 manifold, it's going to be a pain in the ass. It's going to involve a window switch, etc., etc. Well, can you make it work? Yes, you can. It'll make a lot of power across a broad range, but it might, the complexity of it just might be too much to ask for what you're working on here. And then from there, you've got nothing but fixed runner, normal, I should say, intake manifolds, and that's where you're looking at your Durango versus, which isn't really much different than the car intake, by the way, which is to say it'll flow a decent amount, and again, it'll be real snappy, versus the 6.1, which just is pretty, looks good, works really well too, and then the Edelbrock, which is a tank. So, but hopefully that answers the question, and hopefully I didn't confuse the situation either, because there's so much to convey. I mean, to say that the Durango intake is a bad intake is false. It's just going to be a little bit outside of its element with that 392, but not by as much as you might think. Yarmir saying, "Facts, Lamont." Thank you, Yarmir. I appreciate that. GS1's asking, any videos of the Joker cam in action? Yeah, there's one floating around out there. Get with Dr. Differential. He can get you a couple. There's a couple of idle, and one of them where there's a certain full bolt-on LS3 Camaro that didn't quite get the better of a little 5.7 Hemi Challenger with that cam. In fact, little 5.7 put that Camaro in his rearview mirror. Dr. Div saying, I'm out for the night. Give me a shout in the morning. It's been a badass day. Went on the ride and find 2020 on the 2019 wide body that ran with the ZR1. I'm out. Have a good night. It was fun as hell. I'll send pictures. I like it. Any videos of the Joker cam in action on the 392? If you're talking about the high roller cam, aka the Joker 2, there might be, well, Dr. Diff will probably have some on that. That's the car he was riding in the ride and find today. Let's see. Dr. Diff saying, go check out my channel. That's where it's at. Dr. Diff saying, later y'all, that's Pop's car. Just asked Pete to talk about it earlier. Yeah, that's, and again, Lamont, great question, man. I appreciate that very much. So yeah, when we're talking about that 5.7 with the Joker cam, listen, it's enough to put a car length and then some on a full bolt-on LS3 Camaro. It's stock cam, but the rest of it was full bolt-ons, headers, intakes, the whole bit, or at least intake, like cold air intake type stuff. Basically your garden variety 450 horsepower at the flywheel type of a setup, and that little 5.7, as you know, some people might look at it, yeah, it put it on it pretty darn good. So, you know, what can I say? But yeah, awesome question, man. Thank you. And Chuck was saying, awesome question. I agree. Let's see. Kevin's saying, for my 96 LT1, I'll probably go with Lloyd Elliott's LT1 LE1 heads and a cam capable of 360 to 380 rear wheel horsepower and $1,200 for the cam and heads, which is more than enough for me to appreciate. Appreciate the info. So to put it to you like this, I cannot emphasize how much fun that car is going to be. LT1s are extremely responsive at about 360 horse to the rear wheels. Based on the weight of that car, it would be a shade quicker than Foxy, which is to say that it's going to be a ball to drive. Lots of fun. I can't wait for you to have fun with that. You're going to have a lot of fun with that thing. Oh yeah, and Kevin's saying that'll be a potent, mild build on slicks for sure in an F-body. Absolutely. So definitely a nice little 11-second car. Dr. Div saying, have HP tuners add it and pin the PCM. Now I'm out. Yep. Talking about the short runner valve actuator. Let's see. Kevin Collins is asking, Mason, for the 3rd gen Hemis, shouldn't it be possible to custom build rear end ratios? You would think a company would be all over this. Tell me about it. So the Gautrag is serviceable for whatever reason. I've been lamenting this for I don't know how long, but for whatever reason, the HP, the ZF, I should say, rear end is not. So I've been begging for a 331 rear gear set for that diff for forever. That is numerically for a stock 392 ideal. And if you wanted to even cheat that back a little bit for real low DAs, 323. So 323 or 327 gear, how could somebody not have it? But yeah, that's the reason why the ZF is non-serviceable for whatever that means. Let's see. Smokin' 05 is asking, what is your cam called that Rob runs in his Charger? Sleeper cam sounds like a good daily driver cam. Do you think it would still pull over 20 miles per gallon on the freeway? Yes, it will. I know for a fact it will because I did the data logging on that car. And that is a proprietary cam through Pite's Performance Tunes. There's a cam that's kind of like it. It's called a sniper cam. The reason why it's called a sniper cam is because you never see it coming. A flash of light you'll never see and a sound you'll never hear. That is the sniper cam. It does not lope. It does not do anything like that. So you would never know that car's got a cam until it starts walking away from you. But that is a Pite's Performance exclusive grind, and that is the CD01. So if you call and talk to Mike, tell him that you're interested in the CD01 cam, and he will take it from there. Oh, LS-Swap everything is checking in. Yep. And again, yeah, it's very easy to with that cam, yeah, get over 20, no problem. But at any rate, guys, man, we're coming up in over 2 hours. I'm going to go ahead and jump off here. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me tonight. Truly appreciate each and every one of you guys. Sorry, it's getting kind of late. And did that marathon manifold porting, and everything is like in Technicolor right now because I've been staring at something like this close for so long. Anyway, getting back to it. Thank you all very much. I truly appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Thank you all very much for contributing. Definitely helps me keep going. Bring you guys content and bring you guys reviews as well, because I don't have any sponsors. Buy all this stuff and then bring the results to you guys. Guys, keep it shiny side up. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. And that is a wrap on this one. Y'all have a great one and God bless. Adios.